Away, boy! Away!
In his house in Relia, Dead Cthulhu waits dreaming.
You ever played D&D before?
No.
What kind of character do you play?
I play a cultist.
But you are a cultist.
I'm growing gills. Gills! My transformation into a deep one has finally begun. Father Dagon be praised.
Rob, we don't see any gills.
The coffee-drinking cultists who meet under the pavilion. I can bring them to you.
Did you not bring them to me within 3 days? Then you're back on the menu. Got it?
I'm Steve King, and I worship Nyarlathotep.
It's the cultists of the Yellow King.
We're being infiltrated.
It's like Twilight, but with a fish.
Good morning, and welcome to the Morning Grind. I had a fantastic night last night with everybody on the Wind Down live stream. Really worked, really mellowed out, was very chill. If you need some of that in your life, you might want to check out either the replay or be with us again tonight. And that chillness has carried over today, and I'm feeling good, and I'm looking forward to being productive. So, does everybody have their favorite beverage? I've got coffee this morning. The fish do not drink tea mug. Hope you've got some coffee or whatever else it is, tea, or even a glass of water, whatever it is that you like. So let's go ahead and take a sip together. And we breathe first. Let's breathe. If you breathe, you will actually feel better. You will. Helps me out on the stream. Calms me down so we can have a better stream. That way I don't get too keyed up. All right, today we are going to be talking about GURPS. This has been one of my favorite RPGs for a while, and we're going to try to do what we've been doing with evaluations of RPGs is try to get into, the bones of how you actually play the game, because like this whole book right here, this is the character generation book. I talk about creating characters quite a bit, and is creating characters playing the game. You can go through an entire book here just about creating characters in GURPS. This book over here is campaigns, and this book talks about how to actually play a lot more. So we're gonna look at a character sheet first. I think that was Trey who had that idea, that when we're looking at these different RPGs, one of the first things we should probably do is take a look at the character sheet, and that might help us understand what we're doing. So we're going to take a look at the character sheet here, but then we're really going to dive into this section right here, or this book right here. We're not going to get through the whole book, obviously, but the first pages on taking actions and actually what to expect. How do you play when you sit down at the table? Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, though, we're going to cut to the morning messages, and then we will get started. So see you on the flip side of that. This Friday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, we will be watching The Cultists, Season 2, Episode 7 already, Mom's Intervention. It'll be premiering here on YouTube. This is our comedy web show about modern-day Lovecraftian cultists who just want to worship Cthulhu in a world full of people who don't understand. So come and join us. Each episode's about 7 minutes long, but then right after that, at about 7:40 p.m. Central, we'll be live with the after party. I'm the creator, the co-writer, and the producer of the show. I also played Steve, and I'll be joined by the director and maybe some other member of the cast. We'll see if they can stop by. It's a great place to hang out and have some fun, and I'll be doing some type of giveaway. I always give away something on Friday nights when we're doing this, related to tabletop gaming. Maybe it'll be a board game or another dice tray. We'll see. If you don't know the Cultists and you want to get caught up, if you come over to my YouTube channel, the best way to do that is to go to one of the playlists. I try to organize everything on the YouTube channel by a playlist, and if you just scroll down, here is the Season 2 playlist. You can click Play All and go all the way through the playlist, or right below it, there is a Season 1 right there. So you can click there and go all the way through Season 1 as well, and that'll get you caught up on all of the last. Every episode's like 5 to 7 minutes long. There are 10 episodes in the first season, 10 episodes in the second season. So coming up soon, however, is Ritual. This is the Cthulhu Cultist party game of spellcasting and betrayal. This is the game that we designed to go along with the Cultists. We'd really like to be able to do Season 3 of the Cultists. The scripts of that has already been written, and so what we did is we created a board game, a social deduction party game to go along with the Cultists, and we called it Ritual. You can see here we've even got miniatures of all of the different cultists on here. So if you go over here to GameFound, You can see more information about what the game is. You can even follow it right here and get updates. Updates before the campaign even goes live. That's a nice thing about GameFound, and then we'll be launching soon. I don't have a date yet, but we'll be launching soon. You can come here, you can check out the trailer for the game, look at the miniatures. If you click that follow button, then you will get a Rob, High Priest of Dagon in combat pose miniature if you then later come and back the game. So if you'd like to join the play test, you can see how to play right here. This is our basics on how to play. But if you would like to join the play tests and get access to a special advanced copy of the rules. Also, I'll send out a Discord server invite to all of the playtesters and so forth. You can click that link. You'll just go to a playtest request form, and you can get in there. I've had over 700 people already sign up, so I would love to have you as part of that as well. Also, Terra Tiles are in pre-order right now. I am reprinting Terra Tiles. This is my tabletop terrain system that I designed with my brother several years ago. It's been out of print. I'm bringing it back into print. Terra Tiles are large, thick, and durable hexagons that are designed to put out on your gaming table to lay out battlefields fast, whether you're trying to do war games or skirmish games or RPGs. Great for different games, especially that use zones for determining movement. Check those out. There are a whole bunch of different videos on Terra Tiles on this channel. I also used Terra Tiles to create a fully three-dimensional, hexagonal, modular terrain system for my gaming room. I always wanted a terrain system that fit together really well for the table, for the large-size miniatures like we use for skirmish games or RPGs or even war games like Warhammer or something like that. So I was able to use Terra Tiles to create a table for that in about a day's worth of work. I mean, it wasn't all that much effort if you wanted to go the extra step and try to get some three dimensions in there. I put up a whole video on YouTube, a whole video series actually, about how to do exactly that. So if you want a box of Terra Tiles, they're going to be very limited in number, and if you want one of the boxes to have your name on it, you need to do a pre-order through Ravenkeep. All right, that's what's going on right now. Let's get to the main topic. All right, so that was actually pretty good. I'm looking at a timer when I'm doing that. I think I've kind of got the intro to this show kind of down pat. I need to record a new countdown intro. There's a problem that YouTube's having with our existing one. That's the Cultists. I love that, but I want to create a dedicated morning grind intro video. Maybe I can get to that today. And then maybe we can have some sponsorship opportunities and we can put those in the morning messages. I'm thinking the morning messages, I want to be just about 4 minutes long. So, maybe if I could get a couple of sponsors or something like that, maybe each one of them could have a minute, and that would still give me, some other time, 2 more minutes to talk about other things that are going on here at Ravenkeep and things that we're doing as part of the community. I noticed Kane likes the Terra Tiles. Oh, wow, that's epic. Thank you. Thank you. It was a great project if you want to do them 3D. Of course, lots of people use them just flat. I mean, I did for a long time, but I wanted to create a fully 3D one and finally got that done. And it wasn't that big of a project. Trey says, morning. I'm curious about what's changed. The last time I read GURPS was version 1.0. Oh, well, that has been a while. We're looking at 4th edition right here. I never played GURPS 1.0. I did play 3rd edition. All right. So, the reason I was introduced to GURPS was by my art teacher in 8th grade, because he knew that we were in a gaming group and I was in art class, was it 8th grade? Yep, I think it was 8th grade. And he was like, you don't need to be playing Dungeons and Dragons. Don't play Dungeons and Dragons. He said, you need to be playing GURPS, because he was in a gaming group and all of his friends played GURPS. And that's when I was introduced to the idea of a generic system that could be used for any type of adventure. Because he was like, yeah, you learned this system, and then, we rotate playing the GM and we can create any type of world we want to do. And we're always doing different kinds of adventures. And I was like, oh, well, cool. So he let me borrow some of his GURPS books. I read them. I was like, yeah, let's do this. And then we got together a gaming group in homeroom, and the art teacher ran us a game during that semester. So that was a lot of fun. We played for about an hour in homeroom in 8th grade. So that's how I learned about GURPS. So let's take a look at the character sheet. I do think that's a great way to go, Trey. Let me add this to stream. So this is actually in the back of the book. Oh, let me get my windows right here. This is in the back of the character book right here. And this is Day. Day Blackthorn, or Die. I would say Day. Some things all of a sudden, I don't think I've ever pronounced his name out loud before. But anyway, this is a pretty classic character in GURPS because he's used as an example character for creation in a lot of the GURPS books. And he's used as an example character in this as well. So GURPS is a point-based character construction system, which is probably one of the things that is most famous for. Which does present you the opportunity for a lot of character customization. Obviously, that's the case if there's an entire book that's the length of, the Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook, but it only covers character creation. And you do that using a point system. The downside to that is that it takes a long time to create characters, or certainly can take a long time to create characters. You can speed that along by using templates, classes, templates and lenses. But you got to set those up as well. If you've got a good game master who is creating a world, that he might do that work for you, but then again, that work has still got to be done. But at any rate, so this is telling us right here, point summary. This guy was created on 158 points. He has 100 points in advantages, perks, tech level, languages, cultural familiarity. He's got negative 55 points worth of disadvantages and quirks, and then 47 points in skills and techniques. I've got another video here on the channel about my current thinking on point systems and whether or not they're balanced or if they even need to be. But here is the actual character sheet for this character. So we've got strength, dexterity, intelligence, health, HP, your hit points, your will, your perception, and your fatigue right here. So these over here, strength, dexterity, intelligence, and health, those are your main core stats. So higher is better. GURPS is also a roll under system. All you need to play is 3d6. All you need is 3d6. And so if you're trying to do a strength check, for instance, if Blackthorn here was trying to do a strength check, the player would take 3d6, roll them, add those numbers together, and if the score is 8 or lower, he passed the check. That's basically what you're doing and how to play a lot of GURPS. If you're doing a check on the main attributes, it's over there. The same thing with skills over here. So we can see his skills. He's got acrobatics at level 15. So, I mean, that's pretty good. Roll 3d6 and you're trying to get 15 or less. Body sense 16. GURPS has lots and lots of skills too. So basically, once you get your core attributes here, you use those to influence everything else that's going on the character sheet. So we can say that we've got hit points, will, perception. Will is really important as well. Sometimes people talk about that being the missing fifth stat that actually should be over here. It's so important. Languages, DR, that's your damage reduction. This GURPS uses a system where armor absorbs damage, which in general I prefer, generally speaking. And so GURPS does that. So if you're wearing armor, that's how much you subtract from damage that would take. This is your parry and your block right here. Parry and block. You also have dodge, which is right over here. So dodge is dependent upon your encumbrance. So we've got encumbrance levels right here and how that influences your move and then how it influences your dodge. But GURPS is active defense. We've talked a lot about should we have active defense and the advantages and disadvantages of both. I tend to like active defense, especially in theory. Sometimes when you get down to the game design, sometimes I think it's unnecessary actually at the game design level, and it might slow things down. But I know there are also a lot of people who, at least in principle, are fans of active defense, and GURPS does have that. I do like that about GURPS because when I came from Hero Quest, right? Hero Quest was my first kind of game like this to ever play. And Hero Quest is active defense. And then I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it's not. But then when I got to GURPS, another thing I liked about that is that you attack someone with your sword, and then the person who's being attacked chooses to parry, block, or dodge to try to escape the attack. And then if you hit, you roll damage. And if you damage the person, then you subtract the DR. The disadvantage to that is there's a lot of steps. That's a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff going on there that you can really get granular about how your character actually operates. But the downside is there's a lot of steps. Basic lift over here, basic speed, basic move. Oh, I do like this about GURPS as well. This is I think, a great part of this. Damage is not based on weapons. Or not entirely. because, unlike in Dungeons and Dragons, when you open up to the weapon table and the weapons tell you this does D8, D6, D4, whatever kind of damage, your strength, there's a table in the book about your strength. So because we've got a strength 8 here, if I'm thrusting with a weapon, I do 1d, and they're all 6-sided dice. So 1d minus 3 damage, because I'm not very strong. 10 over here is average. So this is a deliberately weak character. That's why you can see you're actually getting points back for having a weak strength. So that's a disadvantage right there. If I'm trying to swing with a weapon, then I do 1d minus 2 damage. And then the weapon modifies that. A particular sword might do, plus 1 damage or plus 2 damage or whatever, cutting damage when you swing with it or something like that. Reaction modifiers over here, advantages and perks. So absolute direction, danger sense, using ESP, flexibility, honest face, legal enforcement powers. That's interesting. Perfect balance, warp, psionic teleportation, range limit 10 yards. Disadvantages and quirks, duty to iSWAT. This is an in-universe kind of thing for one of the GURPS worlds. But a light sleeper, that gets you back 5 points. Overconfident, that gets you back 5 points. Sense of duty to his squad, that gets you back 5 points. Oh, and he's poor, so that got him 15 points. He dislikes deep water, loves high places, no drugs or alcohol, sensitive about height, and a show-off. Those are all perk level things, and get him back 1 point. Most of our time is spent over here in the skills. So these are all the different skills. They are based on some main stats. So you can see it's either an IQ or a dex-based stat, although there is, here's perception right here. And then you can expend more points to make that higher than the base level. So, for instance, it looks like he spent 2 points to get acrobatics at DX plus 0. Yeah, and his DX is 5. Where did he increase that? So climbing, for instance. Climbing, he has at DX plus 3, which is 18. And there's some notes here about perfect balance, absolute direction, and flexibility adding to stuff. So, that's an overview of the GURPS character sheet. That was probably a good way to start, Trey. Let's see what's going on in the comments. It's pronounced die. Hey, good to see you. Coming over from Twitter. We interact on Twitter a lot. It's really good to have you here. So it is die. Okay. Thank you. Die. Okay. So it's die. Trey says, I have noticed the more time it takes to fill out the character sheet, the faster the game seems to go, but the characters take forever to create. Yeah, one reason I would tend to agree with that is because if you've got a lot of information on the character sheet, then you don't have to reference the rule book as much. And that's what slows things down. Oh, how do I do that? Or I'm trying to do this. Oh, I don't remember. Where's the rule book? Pick that up and flip through. So if you've got a lot of stuff to reference on your character sheet and you've got a streamlined gameplay mechanic, then gameplay can go faster, even if it's a more complicated game. And we said that the flip side to that we looked at was Basic Fantasy, which did not have very much on the character sheet. And I was for that because it looked like you could create characters very fast. But the problem with that was that it was not a streamlined gameplay mechanic. It was deliberately old school. It's deliberately like that. But the method for doing different types of actions were completely different from one another. There wasn't like a rollover difficulty mechanic or something like that could always be applied. So then you don't have a whole lot on the character sheet, and it slows you down. Trey continues, with rules-like games, the character sheets take much less time, but seem to need more rulings by the GM because they don't have enough information, slowing the game. Yeah, or a ruling by the GM, right? If the rules-like system itself doesn't provide the mechanic, then you've got to come up with something on the fly with the GM. And some GMs can do that, but others, particularly in all situations, that does slow the game down. So whether you have to go to the book or if you have to make something up, it slows it down. So you can spend the time on character sheet during creation or spend it at the table ruling what is missing from the character sheet. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so who is new to GURPS? Is anybody who has not played GURPS, and how many veterans do we have? Let us know in the chat. I would like to know who's here. And then, let's see here. Let me take this down. And let me bring up the other book. Let's go over to how to play. Get my Windows. Here we go. Found it. Kane says, have not heard of it, but never played. Well, I hope this is a good introduction. I really do. I spend a lot of time working with GURPS. I worked on a Lord of the Rings Middle-earth campaign setting for GURPS. I worked on that quite a bit. And I wish I still had it. I think that was several computers ago, a long time ago, many years ago. And I actually was looking for the file because I was like, that could be something we could talk about. Some of the stuff is still posted on the GURPS boards, but so I went back and I found it. But I don't think that, like, while it was in development, but I don't think I actually got to complete it. Or what's on the board is not the final form, and I was looking for the final form. Inner Light says, I think I played for another fantasy game by Steve Jackson, something Labyrinth, which is also based on a 3D6 roll. Nimdoc, I figured veteran GURPS player. I think we connected on Twitter because of being of our mutual love of GURPS. Started playing just before the switch over to 5e from 3e. Yeah, I remember wondering whether I was going to go over to 5th edition with what I was trying to... 4th edition. That was when this 4th edition was coming out, but I'm glad I did because 4th edition has been out for a long time. So it's now the standard, and it is, I think it is better. It cleans things up from 3rd edition. There's still lots of things people talk about, but wow. I think it's definitely better. Okay, so how do we actually play? What is going on in GURPS? So, whenever a character attempts to perform an action, for example, use a skill, roll 3 dice to determine the outcome. This is called a success roll. The task in question succeeds if the total rolled on the dice is less than or equal to the number that governs the action. Most often a skill or attribute. Otherwise, it fails. For example, if you pick a lock with a lock-picking skill of 9, you must roll 9 or less on 3D to succeed. On a roll of 10 or more, you fail. 3 or 4 is always a success. Rolling 17 or 18 is always a failure. Now, one advantage that this has that I like is that it doesn't have an explicit difficulty for a task. Now, we're going to get into modifiers, but it's much easier, it seems like, for the game master. The game master doesn't have to make a judgment call about how difficult the task is on the fly right there. He or she can add in the modifiers. We're going to get to that. But calling out dexterity check, the player already has all of the information they need. Roll the dice under this dexterity score. The player having all the information they need in order to make that check is nice, because in other systems where you're rolling dice and then adding a modifier, the player doesn't have all the information. He has to get the information from the game master, what the difficulty is and the target number that you're going to roll over. So some people like that, some people don't. I think there are advantages and disadvantages to both in gameplay, but that's an advantage. So I think that makes it go smoother. You know, I set up a GURPS. You have to also get used to that, because a lot of people think the 666s are really good. But remember, GURPS is roll under. So your 3s and your 4s are really good. That's your critical success. 17s and 18s, the high numbers, those are bad. I put together a GURPS fantasy game, and I was running one of the AD&D adventures as GURPS for one of my friends. And it was the one with the Shahagan in it, or the Sahagan. And what is that? I can't remember the name of it right now. Somebody may know. And you pull the elf out of the water. That's the very first thing you do. You're on this ship, and there's this elf who's drowning, and you got to get her out of the water. And she's, almost dead. And the very first roll, when I was introducing this whole group of friends to GURPS, was getting that elf out of the water. And then someone went over to perform first aid on her. And the very first roll was 18. And he was like, yes. And I was like, wait, no, that's critical failure. And so that game started with a critical failure on the first aid roll and killed that elf right from the get-go. So when to roll. So this is important too. And people talk a lot about this today. Oh, let's go. The fantasy trip in the labyrinth. I don't know that one. The Nose Play says, I'm really looking for a system that minimizes players' time looking at their character sheets or in books for rules and more time thinking about telling good stories. Yeah, I agree. But in my order of preference there would be stay out of the rule book. That the references that the players need should be on the character sheets. Nimdoc says it's important to highlight here that it's actually very straightforward and really comes down to the 4 dice mechanics of success, contest, reaction, and damage. Okay, great point. So we were just talking about success rolls right here. So there are contests, there are reaction rolls, and there are rolling damage. Yeah, GURPS has a reputation. We ought to take a look one day at the GURPS space. It's detailed. Has a reputation for being detailed, but the mechanics of what you're actually doing, and that's why I want to talk about how to play, right? Because there are all kinds of extra rules and options and things like that all throughout the books. But if you get down to it, most of what you're doing is success rolls or a contest when you're trying to compete with something. Reaction rolls when you're reacting, like an NPC is reacting to you or something like that, or damage. Damage is pretty straightforward. Success is straightforward. They're all pretty straightforward. You can run this smoothly if you know that and know what you're thinking here. So, okay. Again, telling you roll in important situations, not mundane situations. The GM will make some of your rolls. So that's important. When the character wouldn't know whether or not they succeeded, the GM is supposed to roll, or when the player doesn't know what's going on. Now, there are modifiers that the game master can add to that. It says, rules often specify modifiers for certain success rolls. These bonus and penalties affect the number you are rolling against your target number and not the total rolled on your dice. Bonuses always improve your odds, while penalties always reduce them. So, for instance, the lockpicking skill says -5 if working by touch, for example, in total darkness. This means if you're working in the dark, you must subtract 5 from your lockpicking skill for the attempt. If your lockpicking skill is 9, you roll 9 minus 5 or 4 in the dark. And there might be other modifiers. If the game master is comfortable with that, this is a hard task, -5. This should be a little bit harder, -2, -3. Let's see. Oh, okay. Default rolls. Now, GURPS is also a skill-based system, right? So you're picking all of these skills, but what if you try to do something that's not on the skill list? Well, GURPS has a very sophisticated system built into skills that say, well, if you are trying to pick a lock, I think it's about to be our example here. If you're trying to pick a lock, but you don't have lock picking skill, can you still try to pick the lock? Well, yes, you can. You're going to do that at your default skill level. And it's going to tell you what that is. So for instance, for example, lock picking skill defaults to your intelligence -5. That is, anyone can open a lock without training by making a success roll against 5 less than his IQ. If your IQ is 10, you can open an ordinary lock on a roll of 5 or less on 3D. Not all that likely, but, the smarter you are, the better your chances. But training is always preferable, right? And sometimes skills even default to one another. So interrogation defaults to intelligence -5, intimidation -3, or psychology -4. So if you're not a trained interrogator, you can still get answers out of a prisoner by outthinking him using your IQ, frightening him by using intimidation, or playing mind games with him based on psychology. If you had IQ 12, intimidation at 14, and psychology at 13, your defaults could be 7, 11, and 9, respectively. Roll against the best one. There are some things that you cannot default to. Potential equipment modifiers. Here are the general recommendations for modifiers for task difficulty. Everything from automatic all the way up to impossible. Information on time and long tasks. Degree of success and failure. So there is critical success. And I like the way this goes. A critical success is an especially good one. You score a critical success if you roll a 3 or a 4. That's always a critical success. A 5 is a roll of critical, is a critical success if your effective skill is 15 plus. A roll of 6 is a critical success if your roll is 16 plus. And critical failure, roll of 18 is always a critical failure. 17 is a critical failure if your effective skill is 15 or less. Any roll of 10 greater than your effective skill is a critical failure. Okay, contests. So this is what Nimdoc was just talking about. The nose play says inequalities is greater than mathematics. Oh, excuse me. Inequalities is greater than arithmetic for speed. In other words, comparing what's bigger or smaller is faster than adding up stuff for most humans. Yeah, and addition is faster than subtraction, right? I was working with the action resolution for the system that I was working on, and you got to think about that too. Even if your mechanic is something that is, this really works well, but it requires subtraction. It is a game, and people might not want to subtract things. They're probably faster at adding things, and even what shape dice people roll. One of the reasons that I hear people talk about GURPS or that they don't want to play is because it's just 6-sided dice, and people have all these shiny dice, right, of a polyhedral kind, and GURPS doesn't use it. And that does matter to some people. If that's part of the fun, using the polyhedral dice might be something to think about. Just a moment. So, we should breathe here and sip. Breathe and sip with me. So, contests. This is the other big one, right? Sometimes a situation will arise in which two characters must compare attributes, skills, or other traits to settle a competition. The one with the highest score doesn't always win, but that's the way to bet. A contest is a quick way to handle such a competitive situation without playing it out in detail. In a contest, each competitor attempts a success roll against the ability being tested with all applicable modifiers, and then compares his results to his opponent's. There are two different ways to make this comparison. Quick contests. A quick contest is a competition that is over in very little time, often in 1 second, perhaps even instantly. By the way, once you get to combat, you are using combat rounds in 1 second. Your combat round is 1 second in GURPS. A quick contest is over instantly. Examples include 2 enemies lunging for a gun or 2 knife throwers seeing who gets close to the bullseye. If each competitor attempts a success roll. If one success roll, so contests build on success rolls, so that you still have this unification of the mechanic. It's an expansion of the mechanic, really. If both succeed, each competitor attempts his success roll. If one succeeds and the other fails, the winner is obvious. If both succeed, the winner is the one with the largest margin of success. If both fail, the winner is the one with the smallest margin of failure. A tie means nobody won. In the example above, both fighters grab the weapon at once, or the knives hit the same distance from the bullseye. And that's easy. That's easy and that's elegant. I remember having played GURPS, but then going back with some friends who were playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And the rules for this, this is pretty basic to me. But we were looking at, that was back when we had the book Combat and Tactics, and it was trying to explain something like a contest, something just like this. And except for the way it did not work. Like, it was some kind of ridiculous way. And I was like, no. If you've got 2 players who are in a contest over something, this is how you do it. And everybody heard that at the table, and they were like, oh, yeah, that's exactly how we should be doing something like that. Instead of, I don't know, whatever weird kind of thing, Dungeons and Dragons, that actually wasn't even mathematically right. It was so weird. Trey says, I'm wondering how it deals with stat inflation in a roll under system. Well, we can look at how later we can look at how you level up. In GURPS, you do get in order when you're leveling up, your experience points. You don't have experience points, you're getting additional points, at the end of game sessions or different milestones or whatever. There are rules for how the game master is supposed to divvy out some additional character points at the end of play sessions, and then you can use those to improve your character. But the amount of points that stats cost go up, right? It's not something linear. It's something that is exponential. I guess it might not be perfectly, but if you want to go from 10 to 11 and 11 to 12 and 12 to 13, that's not all that bad. But once you start trying to get to 25 to 26 or 27, you start having to spend a whole lot of points in order to do that. Now, it still works. NimDoc has some additional information. Normally through GM boundaries and modifiers. If you have a DX of 18, you're going to be doing things that are really hard. That's the other way. The Game Master should be putting a lot of modifiers on that. One reason you might want to have a 20 in something is because that way, when you are doing very hard tasks that have a lot of modifiers, you can actually do them. Sean Punch, Crom on the GURPS boards talks about that a lot. And actually, I think that probably modifiers are underused in GURPS. I was probably underusing them, and they should be. And I think that's probably the case in a lot of games. But like I was looking at this, and we will look at this specifically later in a later live stream. But this is Dungeon Fantasy. GURPS specifically designed for fantasy. Dungeoneering in a contained box. And some of those characters do have rather high skills in their weapons, but they're like that because the deeper you go into dungeons, the harder things should become. And so when you're in the upper levels, maybe you are, you're cleaning things up, but it should increase difficulty as you go deeper in the dungeon. Stats are now flat priced per level usually, and skills level off at 4 since 5e. Oh, really? Okay, I didn't remember that. Thank you for the correction. So we basically margin of victory. Let's see. I think that's kind of basic. You're comparing your margin of victory to your skills, right? The winner's margin of victory is the difference between the margin of success and the loser's margin of success if both is the winner's margin of victory is the difference between his margin of success and the loser's margin of success. Oh, margin of victory is different from margin of success. If both had succeeded, the sum of their margin of success and the loser's margin of failure if he succeeded and the loser had failed, or the difference between the loser's margin of failure and his margin of failure if both failed. Okay. Resistance rolls, regular contests. This is a slow motion competition, a slow competition with much more give and take. For instance, arm wrestling. Each character attempts his success roll. If one succeeds and the other fails, the winner is obvious. If both succeed or both fail, the competitors' relative positions are unchanged and they roll again. Eventually, one character succeeds and the other fails. At this point, the one who made his roll is the winner. The length of game time each attempt takes depends on the activity and is up to the game master. In a combat situation, each attempt takes 1 second. But in a library research contest, with the fate of the world hanging on who finds a certain obscure reference first, each attempt could represent days of time. Now, here is something about high scores, actually, Trey. So extreme scores. If both contestants have a score of 6 or less, a regular contest can bog down the game as both sides keep rolling failure after failure. To keep things moving, raise the lower score to 10 and add the same amount to the higher score. So for a 5 versus 3 contest, add 7 to each score to make it 12 versus 10. Likewise, a regular contest can become deadlocked if both contestants have scores of 14 or more, because it can take a long time before someone rolls a failure. To speed up the process, reduce the lower score to 10 and subtract the same amount from the higher score. So in a 19 versus 16 contest, subtract 6 from each score to make it 13 versus 10. When both scores are greater than 20, a contest of strength between dinosaurs, even this will not suffice. Instead, reduce the lower score to 10 and multiply the higher score by 10 divided by the lower score rounded down. Okay, so for example, in a 600, this is extreme high score. So for a 600 versus 500 contest, multiply the higher score by 10 divided by 500 and set the lower one to 10 to make it a 12 versus 10 contest. I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. So you mentioned reactions, so we should probably talk about reactions. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff here. I think that those are basically the core of how to play. We can get into some combat. How much time have we got? We've been kind of going over time. We typically stream here for an hour and then about an hour to an hour and 10 minutes. So we still have time. Let's see if we can find reactions and then combat and damage. Climbing, digging, hiking. Oh, I've been hiking in the afternoons. Could probably come in here and see what type of hike I've been doing in GURPS terms. Jumping, lifting and moving things, pulling and dragging, lifting and moving things during combat, running, swimming. It's all here for you. GURPS covers a lot of stuff. Fatigue cost, throwing distances, sense rolls, hearing, vision, taste, and smell. Influence rolls. That's very close. That's talking about a deliberate attempt to ensure a positive reaction from an NPC with an appropriate influence skill. Oh, see reaction rolls. So reaction rolls are on page 494. Let me see if I can just get there. $4.94. Still looking. Playing the wait. Yeah. Oh, reaction rolls right here. When the PCs meet an NPC whose reaction is not predetermined, the game master makes a reaction roll on 3d6. The higher the roll, the better the reaction. The GM then plays the NPC according to the guidelines on the reaction table. Reaction table. The GM should keep this roll secret from the players. They don't know, for instance, whether that friendly-looking old farmer is giving them straight advice or sending them into a trap. A reaction roll is not a success roll. There are 3 important differences. There is no target number to roll against. A high roll is good, not bad. Reaction modifiers apply directly to the die roll. A reaction bonus is the factor that will make NPCs friendly, while a reaction penalty is something that will bias the NPCs against the PCs. Some common reaction modifiers are personal appearance and behavior, skills, racial or national biases. Elves don't like dwarves, for instance. Appropriate behavior by the players. Here's your opportunity to reward good role playing. A good approach should be worth +1 or more. A wholly inappropriate one should penalize the party. Random reaction rolls are great when they add a note of unpredictability to the game. This is much more fun for the GM too. However, never substitute random die rolls for reasons and logic. So that is the reaction roll. Now, we can get into combat because damage was the other one. And there's actually 2 different chapters here. There's combat and then chapter 12, tactical combat. And basically, this is the amount of detail here. This is all of your basic rules and also not miniature heavy. But when you get into tactical combat, this assumes that you are using figures on a hexagonal grid. I love some hexagons. This is another reason, GURPS is another reason why I prefer hexagons for gaming. You could tell because I made Terra tiles. So I've always been a fan of hexagons, even though Dungeons & Dragons standard is squares. Make some things easier, but not as good. I've always been a hexagon guy. Inner Light says, this all sounds very complicated. Well, it might be. It might be. GURPS has a reputation for it. It covers everything. And I had this discussion in another video and laid out my thinking here. There's a lot that I like about GURPS. It's one of the role-playing games I think about most when designing one and trying to run one. The other one is Fate. It doesn't quite do what I want to do. Cortex is coming up. We've been studying Cortex. I've been thinking more about Cortex. I don't mind digging into GURPS. You can make it do so much stuff because there are so many rules, but you don't have to use them all, right? I mean, you can pull things out and be modular. But that takes work for the game master. And there are only a certain number of people who are going to want to do that work and get into it and pull out all of the stats or whatever you need in order to play in a particular world or in a particular game. And GURPS doesn't have just like an open license or an easy to use license. I wish that it did, so that independent publishers, the game masters who want to do the work to dig into the books and then create, their own, world book, basically, could be able to do that. This is what Dungeon Fantasy is. They came in. This is a simplified version of GURPS that strips out everything that you don't need unless you're going on a dungeon crawl. But so they've been doing that internally, and I think this was very much a success. But I wish we'd be able to do it externally too. Trey says, it seems like they have good social combat rules too. Many games do not. Yep, note that reaction rolls are one of the few exceptions to roll low. So that's just another thing to remember. So it's not quite a fully unified mechanic. But you're right, reaction rolls, you need to roll high. Before I forget, can you address this later? Yep, okay. I can send you something from the game I'm working on that we can go over in the morning grind. Okay. I think that looking at stuff from community members and things like that, and people who we've got several people who are making RPGs and games and things like that. So when it's ready, I think we can definitely do that and get feedback from the community. And it might be valuable as well to see somebody look at the material for the first time as a creator, so you can see what's being communicated well and what's not. So in tactical combat, oh no, let's not do tactical combat. How much time have we got? Just a little bit of time. But I think enough to look at basics of combat right here. So every character is doing something in 1 second. So GURPS fights go fast in universe, although they can take much more table time. The turn sequence is the order which they act, and that has to do with basic speed. The combatant with the highest basic speed goes first and takes his turn. So you're not rolling for initiative. There's no high, but you're going by the characteristics of your character. There are several different. A maneuver is an action that you take on your turn. Each turn, you must choose one of the following maneuvers. And this is something that I like to have printed out. And there are quick reference sheets or something like that to put at the table. What do you do during combat? You can aim. You can conduct an all-out attack. You can conduct an all-out defense, an attack, a change posture maneuver, concentrate. You can do nothing. You can evaluate. You can feint. You can move an attack, ready, or wait. All right. So those are your options about what you're doing in your single 1 second. And then this basically tells you what these are. So do nothing, not requiring a whole lot of explanation. Move is something that you can do up to your basic move on your character sheet. Change posture. Valid postures are standing, sitting, kneeling, crawling, lying prone, face down, and lying face up. And then you can change between those. And here's the effect of that. Aim. Full turn maneuver used to aim a ranged weapon. Evaluate. This maneuver is the melee combat equivalent of aim. It lets you take time to study an adversary in order to gain a combat bonus on a subsequent attack. You must specify one visible opponent who is close enough to attack unarmed or with a ready melee weapon, or who you could reach with a single move and attack. So evaluate's like aiming, but for a sword. Attack, that's the basic option to go. Feint, that is a fake melee attack. You cannot feint someone. Excuse me this morning. Throat's getting scratchy. A fake melee attack. You can feint someone. You cannot feint someone unless you could have hit them with a melee attack. That is, your weapon is ready and your foe is within reach. This maneuver is not an attack, although it does not make your... It is not an attack, and it does not make your weapon unready. Some weapons become unready when you attack with them. If you feint, you do not cause your weapon to go unready. When you feint, roll a quick contest of melee weapon skills with your foe. If either of you is unarmed, you may roll against an unarmed combat skill instead. Your opponent may opt to roll against cloak or shield skill if he is suitably equipped, and this would give him a better roll. If his dexterity is better than his combat skill, he may roll against his dexterity instead. If you fail your roll, your feint is unsuccessful. Likewise, if you succeed, but your foe succeeds by as much or as more than you do, your feint fails. If you make your roll and your foe fails, subtract your margin of success from the foe's active defense if you attack him with attack, all-out attack, or move an attack on the next turn. For instance, if your skill is 15 and you roll a 12, your foe defends against you at -3 next turn. So it requires thinking. You're tactically thinking about different maneuvers that you can make. I almost brought that up. Yep. If this isn't enough for you, which it might not be, then this book is for you. GURPS Martial Arts. This is a great book. This greatly expands specifically hand-to-hand combat and stuff like that. We're going to have to take a look at this book on Morning Grind. I'm really having fun with Morning Grind because I like talking about all of this stuff, and it's great having you here. And there are a lot of books over there, and there are a lot of different things in different books that you can that we can go over. But yeah, this is a great book on martial arts combat. Or Zierius says, stat inflation is a sign that you need bigger challenges. Instead of just being attacking the guy, now do it where on the ground, in dim light, in slippery mud, or you're just doing more epic stuff. Yeah, I think so. I agree with that. Higher challenges, going places that you wouldn't even be able to go, adventuring in locations that you otherwise at a lower level would just die. GURPS is the erector set, Legos of gaming. Yeah, it is. You can use a lot of pieces or as few as suits your taste. I've seen lots of pieces in play or just a roll and shout with 3d6 and GM given modifiers. Right, you can make GURPS do whatever you want. Now, see, to me, that's an advantage of more crunch. I prefer for it to be there, and so if you need it, you can go and get to it, because if something comes up, that way, well, it depends on your preference. The game master can make some kind of ruling, but on the other hand, if you're like, now, wait a minute, I think there is a way to handle that, it might be in the rules. And it probably is if you're talking about GURPS. And it's handy to have that, I found, when you need it. With other systems that I've been played that are intentionally more rules light, all of a sudden there is no rule. Because you can always ignore a rule. You can ignore a whole bunch of GURPS. And it's not going to hurt anything. Because like I said, we're talking about pulling out pieces. You just use the pieces that you want to play. But if the piece isn't there and you find that it's missing, to me, that's a problem on other systems. So I like the stuff. Show Hero Quest. Well, actually, I've got a whole bunch of Hero Quest stuff on the channel. I've got even a live play of Hero Quest for dinner and a board game. So we play in my dungeon gaming room. And then also I've got how I built a jumbo 3D size board for Hero Quest. So there's a lot of Hero Quest stuff. I do want to look at the Hero Quest app. That's something to do here on dinner and board game, or here on Morning Grind, and even do maybe some solo play. I think that's something we could do. So we were looking at feinting, all-out attack, attack a foe with a ready weapon, making no effort to defend against incoming attacks. So if you choose all-out attack, you got options even there. Determined, make a single attack that's +4 to hit. Double, make 2 attacks against the same foe if you have 2 ready weapons or 1 weapon that does not have to be readied after use. Attacks with a second weapon held on the offhand are at the usual -4. You can feint, so you can do a feint and then an attack, right? If you choose all-out attack. And then strong, make a single attack at normal skill. If you hit, you get +2 to damage, right? If you make a ranged attack, you can specify either determined or suppression fire. Move and attack, all-out defense. So, I mean, what's the penalty for all-out attack? You're making no effort to defend yourself against enemy attacks. Oh, right here, down here. You may make no active defense at all from the point you take this maneuver until your next turn. So remember, GURPS is active defense. So you choose how to defend yourself when you're attacked. But if you have taken all-out attack, you are not allowed to defend yourself. So if someone attacks you after you make an all-out attack, all you can do is hope he misses. You cannot dodge, parry, or block. Hope he misses, or hope you're wearing enough armor to soak up the damage. Let's just slide by some of these: movement and combat, step, crouching, attacking. Here is our basic attack roll. First, you make your attack roll. If the roll is successful, your attack is a good one, because you're trying to roll under your score with whatever modifiers. Now your foe must make a defense roll to see if he can defend against your blow. If he makes this roll, he evades or stops the attack and is not hit, and that's the dodge, parry, or block. If he misses his defense roll, your blow struck home, and you roll for damage. Now, let's talk about damage, because that was our something we wanted to talk about, because that's actually one of my additional favorite things that GURPS has. So it does have hit locations as well. So hit locations matter. And if you get hit, the different weapons, let's see, how do we talk about this in just a few more minutes? Different weapons have different modifiers to actually injury that it does. Oh, we got Nimdoc says, deceptive attack is a great way to lower defenses, block, parry, dodge on highly skilled opponents. It's one of the great improvements in the jump from 3E to 4th edition. Trey says, I'm seeing many of the ideas and modifiers that I have seen in Savage Worlds and Cypher, different dice mechanics, but same type of modifiers. Savage Worlds I have read, and we should probably look at Savage Worlds again. I was told to look at Savage Worlds by people who thought that I would really like it. And I think I did understand why that was the case, and it was recommended to me. But yeah, a lot of things probably have been used over and over again. I've been trying to watch a video on how to play Cypher. But my point was that different weapons have damage is different from injury. Your character takes injury. Okay, damage is what you roll. So if you get a, you're doing like 1d plus 1 damage, and it's cutting damage, the sword was going to make it cutting damage. But, and you roll 1d6 plus 1. So let's say you roll a 5. You subtract the opponent's armor. And if you're using hit locations, then subtract the damage reduction of that particular location. And so if he's wearing a light helmet and you hit him in the head for 5 points of damage, that's got maybe a damage reduction of 3. So we're sitting here at 2. But damage is not injury. And I do like this about the system. So I hit somebody in the head, got through the DR. Now I'm in the head. The skull actually has DR in GURPS. So you get through another DR of 1 through the skull. Well, you did, I forget what my example was, but let's say you end up with 2 points of damage that actually get through with the hit location to the head, through the helmet that they're wearing and through somebody's skull. Well, it's still really bad to be hit in the head, because like getting a sword in your brain is not a good thing. That's why you wear a helmet. So even if you get through with only like 2 or 3 points of damage, and an average human's going to have 10 hit points, you modify that damage by the type of damage type of the weapon. So I believe swords and cutting are times 1.5. So if you got in for 2 points of damage, you actually get 3 points of injury because it's a cutting weapon. And then being hit in the head, the damage, isn't it multiplied by like 4 or something like that? You get a huge modifier for actually getting through through the DR of somebody's head. So you can be taking people out in one shot if you get hit in the head. Of course, you've got higher modifiers if you're going to make a called shot to the head. I do like all of that. It's the style of gaming I used to do a lot. I've been drifting toward a more narrative focus, but I still enjoy both until I get excited about it right now talking. You've got people who are really into this type of gaming. It can be a lot of fun. And Nimdoc says, the hit locations are also not limited to humanoid forms. Yes, which is really nice. There are a few different body shapes mentioned in campaigns because in GURPS, we're not always fighting humanoid shapes. That's always a problem with hit locations. If you're in fantasy, sci-fi, whatever, hit locations seem great in games until everything is based on a humanoid form, and then you're fighting a giant spider or whatever, and now all of a sudden it's different. But so we have different hit locations for different forms. Savage Worlds, Orzi Arius. I hope I'm getting that right. Orzi Arius. Savage Worlds has some great setting and properties. It's my other favorite multi-genre game system, second to GURPS. Yes, cutting is ×1. I need to look at it in more detail. Yes, cutting is 1.5, impaling is ×2, but hit locations also modifies. Vital damage gets ×3. So there we go. Yeah, hit to the vitals. Once you get through with damage, your injury is ×3. So that's rough. Okay, we're gonna be winding down here. Got a question. Do you like Hero Quest? It's my favorite board game ever. Yes, I really do like Hero Quest. It was the first board game, adventure game that, like this that I was ever introduced to. I still have my original Hero Quest that I was given on Christmas morning. We play that game a lot. It's a family tradition. It is a family tradition. Okay, so if you're new here, this is how we wind up, how we close down the morning live streams. Let me take down GURPS. I really enjoyed that. I like doing these also because it gives energy in the morning. I like talking about gaming related stuff with energy in the morning. So first of all, if you are coming in, one of my big things I'm going to be working on today is getting the ritual playtest out and working on a way to get an online playtest set up so we can all playtest Ritual. It's a social deduction party game about Cthulhu cultists, and I want to be able to playtest that online. We're an online community, so yeah, I can send out the rules. Let me send you the link to the game so you can check it out. And if you want to be a playtester, if you want an advanced copy of the rules, we'll come up with an online environment to play, and you can let me know at that sign-up form. And I'll be working on that today, and we'll be in touch. But I want this. One of the things that I really want to do with what I'm doing with these live streams is to make this not only a positive place because we get energy because we're talking about our gaming and everything in the Geekverse, but I actually want us to have a better day, right? I want us to actually be able to plan and have a better day. So at the end of this, we take 5 minutes, 6 minutes, not long at all, to talk about what we would want to accomplish today, and then we go and try to accomplish those things, and then we report back in the evening. I've been doing an evening live stream called the Wind Down. This is all still very experimental. Last night was the 4th wind down. It was great. You may want to watch. But then we can come back tonight, and then we can hold ourselves accountable and see if we achieved our goals. And if not, celebrate. We celebrate when we do. So we're a positive and constructive community. Celebrate successes. But then also, if we didn't quite get the day that we wanted to have, we can think about how we might want to improve and how we should improve for tomorrow. So we're going to do that here for just a few minutes right here. Trey says, another one you might like is basic role-playing from Chaosium or Mithras. Yeah, I don't know that one. I put that one on the list as well. Basic role-playing. We might check that out here on Morning Grind. So, all right, let's go over here. Well, let me take that down. Ding, 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 ding.
I manage my department, and I've been doing that for several years now.
Your department's just you, right?
Yes, Jim, but I am not easy to manage.
Okay, so what we're doing here is I'm still practicing explaining this. If you have a system for time management and making, getting things done that you're trying to do during the day, then use that. But if you don't, here is the simple system for just your tasks. Take a sheet of paper. This is an index card, but if you've got a small sheet of paper, tear that out. Or if you are doing this on a notepad on your computer, like Notepad on a phone or something like that, you can use that too. But I do recommend a piece of paper because you can put this in your pocket. You can reference it without having to pick up your phone, because I know when I do, or when I pick up my phone or I do something electronic, I can get sucked into social media and everything else that's going on in the phone. So take this, and I even fold it in half. You just need half an index card right here. And we're calling this the big rocks. And you only get 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. And I bet you already know what those things are that you need to accomplish today. If you accomplished 3 things, if you could only do 3 things, what is it that at the end of the day, in about 12 hours, the wind down is going to be in about 12 hours. That's when the live stream is. So we've got the next approximately 11 or 12 hours to accomplish 3 things. I have got to get this email server set up. I want us to be able to be in better contact through email. I'm told I hate algorithms. I'm tired of them. And a lot of people told me the best way to be in touch is through email. And I agree because, emails get to you. So I've been working on trying to get a better system for being in contact with everybody through email. I have got to get that set up. I have got to send playtest emails out about Ritual. And I have got to look at Tabletop Simulator or other virtual environment to set up virtual playtests. If I were able to do that today, that would be great. If you accomplish those things, you can put on a fourth. Okay. But on the other hand, you don't want to be looking at a list and, depress yourself. That's why we're not doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The computer will allow you to have 18 of these things, but you're probably not going to be able to do 18 things today. So think of, while you're having your coffee or tea or whatever it is that you like this morning, what is it that you want to accomplish? And then let's go and do that and make that happen over the next 10 hours, 10 or 11 hours, whatever it is through the day, before we wind down and chillax here in the wind down this evening. We got a comment here. The basic role-playing's percentile system. I do love percentile systems. That's also pretty classic. Has a very different feel from GURPS bell curve. Both have their advantages. They're just different. Yeah. All right. Well, I hope this was a positive live stream for you. It was for me. I'm psyched up. Inner Light was saying the morning grind is kind of like a pep rally. And it is. I kind of like that. I like thinking of it this way. This was our pep rally. We got to talk about cool stuff. I enjoyed hanging out with you. And now we also have identified what we need to do today. And we're going to go and do those things. Have a fantastic day. And then we will be back tonight for the wind down. See you then. Have a great